hello to you all as well. And thank you all so much for being here. What an exciting day this is for us here at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum to welcome someone who has become such an important part of this museum. His name is essentially etched in stone here at this museum for the amazing collection of single-sign Negro League player autographed baseballs that he donated a number of years ago. And the fact, as I mentioned earlier, that the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum is the only place that he's going to do this kind of signing. A little bit. I might need gloat just a little bit. What a week this has been for us. I just got back from Savannah, where we were part of an announcement with the Savannah Bananas that we are bringing back the old Indianapolis Clowns. Bananas, that's where they got it from. The Indianapolis Clowns were doing those kinds of things way back in the 1940s. And so to bring the Clowns back and be part of the Savannah Bananas entourage of teams. The one and only Geddy Lee. Geddy Lee, welcome back home to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum.
Now you're making me well up now.
It feels
I'm super happy to be back. Very special place.
I can't even begin to tell you how honored and proud we are that you agreed to do this. And you know, when I found out about the book being released, I just hit a little note saying, you know, we sure would like to have a book signing. You know, just a little subtle hint. Just a little subtle hint. I didn't expect a reaction. And when Meg called me, and Meg is part of Geddy's team, when she called me and said, well, Geddy wants to do a book signing at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. What do you think? What do you mean? What I think? when can we do it? And I'm super excited to be able to welcome him back. As I mentioned to you all, Geddy's name is essentially etched in stone here at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum through that amazing collection of Negro Leagues, single-sign Negro League player baseballs that he donated. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank and remember JW.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That donation wouldn't have happened without JW. You know, he was the one who called, I found these baseballs. What do you want to do with them? So he helped put that whole thing together, and I miss him dearly. And him and I built my entire collection together. And he brought me here the very first time before that donation was even possible.
Yeah, no, and JW arranged a tour for Geddy. I don't know what I was doing that day, but my teammate, Kathy Moss, who's still with us, she took him on a tour of the museum, and that tour resonated.
It was inspirational and embarrassing that I didn't know so many of the things I learned that day, that there was so much to discover about the Negro Leagues and the role they played in the history of baseball in this country. And I would, as a Canadian, I still felt that if I was going to be a true, passionate person about baseball, I needed to know the whole story. And when I came here, I was inspired to learn the rest of that story, and it really did resonate.
Well, you know, and I think that's the thing, we talked about it when we were just kind of waiting to come out to bring Geddy out here. He said something that really is what makes this story so special. He said he felt inspired through this experience. And that's really what's at the crux of this story. I know that the moral majority of my visitors are expecting to be introduced to a sad, somber kind of story, because the story is anchored against the backdrop of American segregation, a horrible chapter in this country's history. But the real story here is what emerged out of segregation, this wonderful story of triumph and conquest. And it's all based on one small, simple principle. You won't let me play with you in the major leagues? Okay, I'll create a league of my own. And so when you walk through this museum, you walk away cheering the power of the human spirit to persevere and prevail. And I think you're right. As a baseball fan, and I consider myself to be a baseball fan, when I was first introduced to this museum way back in 1993, I had the same reaction. How little I knew about the history of this game and its connections to the history of this country. Because as a baseball fan, y'all, we were all cheated. Because we should have seen the best play. All the best take the field together.
The best players, the characters of the game, the people that drove the game, the people that built it and promoted it. I mean, that's what this museum can inform us all about. And that's what I fell in love with about this place. And when the opportunity arose to contribute in some way to this wonderful establishment, I couldn't resist. And JW and myself, we worked to make that a reality. So I'm very pleased again. This makes my third visit.
Third visit, because not only did he donate the baseballs, he came back and dedicated them. And so, as you guys can well imagine, for my visitors, particularly those who are fans of music, but particularly my Canadian fans, particularly when the Blue Jays come to town, they all look at their collection and say, "Is that the Geddy Lee?" Yes, that is the Geddy Lee. And they don't feel the crowd. So when you look at the museum, it has become one of the most talked about aspects of this museum. And so to be here today to talk about this amazing book that is taken from his baseball, a portion of his baseball collection, right, that is highlighted in this book called 72 Stories. That's right. You've written several books, New York Times best-selling books. What inspired you to do this baseball book in particular?
Well, yeah, I never thought of myself as an author, but I've sort of stumbled into this new line of work. You know, when I first started a book called The Big Beautiful Book of Bass, which in a sense was a journey into history, but the history of the instrument that gave me everything in life. So I discovered that I loved looking back in the past and researching things, and so I also discovered that the solitude of being a writer suits my personality. So yeah, so that's how it started. And then during COVID, we locked down pretty heavy in Canada. I had a lot of time to myself, too much. And that's when I wrote my memoir, and thankfully it reached a lot of people that appreciated it. And so after JW sadly passed away a few years ago, I was sitting in my office and I was looking at my collection, and I hadn't added to the collection in a long time. And I realized that, you know, we are just proprietors of any collection, and we just own them for a short period of time, and then the responsibility for minding them has to move on to somebody else. And I realized, well, there's just too much in this office, and there's too much that I'm hoarding, and so it's time to move some of them on. And I thought before I did that, I should write down some of my favorite stories, because What is assigned baseball? It's a representation of a story, a human being, accomplishment. All those things are wrapped up in the symbol of this baseball. And so a friend of mine and myself, we sat down thinking of all the stories that were in the room around me, and we came to the number 72. So that's why there's 72 stories. And it was really fun to do, and it was supposed to coincide with the sale of some of those things that I did a couple years ago. But of course, I'm a very fussy person, and I wasn't happy with the way the book was turning out being printed, so it got delayed and delayed. And now finally, HarperCollins has, they fell in love with the book. Originally, I was only going to release it, you know, as a sort of a private thing on our website, but my publisher loved the book and said, no, let's put this out for the wider world. I said, okay, here we go. So it's finally here, yeah.
And if I have another reason to gloat, I'm in the book. Young Bob Kendrick hanging out with Geddy Lee here at the Negro Leagues Museum. He hasn't aged. I don't know what happened to me, but
You look the same.
you know, I tell you what, man, when your office called, I said, well, this is what it said. Geddy has a few baseballs he'd like to donate. Would you all like to have them? And as oftentimes tell the story, naturally we said yes. But you know, we're all thinking 3 or 4. You know, that might come our way. And as you all know the story, the first collection was over 200. And then a subsequent collection came back, also over 200. Now giving the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum one of the largest collections of signatures. Maybe not featured or is featured in this book.
Oh, it's really hard to answer that. That's why there's 72 stories. It could have been 150 stories easily, but of course, the things that mean the most to me are the things that are connected to people I've met. And those are things I never would part with. There are some of those stories in the book, you know, my memories of the 92 and 93 World Series in Toronto, being a Blue Jay fan, games I attended with my son. And now that they seem to be contending again, I get the wonderful experience of bringing my 11-year-old grandson to these games. So, you know, like yourself, I've been really fortunate to meet a lot of ball players who are wannabe musicians. And of course, most musicians I know are wannabe athletes. And those are the items that have been signed to me by many friendly and wonderful players. Some of them Kansas City Royals, like you know, George Brett, etc. And Jeff Montgomery.
Well, there he is.
Oh, there he is. Yeah. So if I had to choose, it would be those things.
Yeah. For me, there's one little, almost nondescript photograph inside the museum, and it's of a young Henry Aaron standing at the train station. He's 18 years old. He's about to go leave home to go join the Indianapolis Clowns of the Negro Leagues. I mean, he couldn't weigh more than 160 pounds. Skinny, frail, standing there at the train station. And it's my favorite photograph for a couple of reasons. Henry Aaron is my all-time favorite baseball player and my childhood idol as a kid growing up in Crawfordville, Georgia. East of Atlanta, west of Augusta, all of 500 people. But every day on the playground, Geddy, I wanted to be Henry Aaron. Now, I know some other kids wanted to be Henry Aaron sometime, but I had to be Henry Aaron. And in 1999, I get to take my childhood idol on a tour of this museum. I
don't know, the game is so rich. There's so many heroes and so so many unsung players that come to mind, so it's just so hard to choose. And the beautiful thing about baseball, of course, is that no two games are the same. They might seem the same to those that find the game maybe a little less exciting, but something always happens to distinguish it from another game. I love that about baseball. It's surprising and it's unexpected and it's beautifully designed, in my view.
Well, I tell you what, I told Cito Gaston that you were going to be here, and he was very excited about the fact that you were going to be here. He was also very excited about the collection that you had donated.
Right.
Cito was here last weekend, and we were so thrilled to induct him into what we call the Hall of Game. And the great Joe Carter was there as well. And Joe Carter and Cito Gaston will likely never have to pay for lunch again in Toronto. Joe Carter, of course, hit that epic home run to help bring James in that world. You were in the ballpark.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
What was that moment in time like?
Well, I mean, the greatest moment in my baseball fandom had to be in '92 because I flew to County Stadium in Atlanta with my brother to watch Game 6 of that World Series. And my friends on the team got me tickets with some of the coaches' wives, and I sat beside Candy Maldonado's dentist from his hometown. Nice man. And we just counted the outs, and then of course Dave Winfield came up in extra innings and hit that double that won it, and we just couldn't believe that was our first World Series championship. But fast forward the next year, at home in Toronto, looked like the Jays were going to lose that game until Joe came up, and man, that was a thunderbolt. And the whole city, the whole country exploded. It was just an incredible experience. I'll never forget that. And the entirety of Toronto was out on the streets celebrating. And no rioting, no damage. It was all very Canadian.
It's one of my favorite cities, though. I absolutely love Toronto. The Negro Leagues has a tremendous connection to Canada because they would oftentimes take this brand of baseball to Canada. And they were treated so much better in Canada than they were here. And so I've had a number of opportunities to go to Toronto and specifically to talk about the Negro Leagues and the fans' appreciation of the heritage of our game is so very special. And our game is a global game, folks, due in large part to the Negro Leagues. They helped make it the global game that it is today. They were just never given credit for it. And so to have Geddy Lee here, and he talked a little bit about it, it elevates the awareness of this history and of this museum. And beyond the fact that he was so gracious in donating that significant collection that you guys will get a chance to see for those who have not seen it, that collection was made even more meaningful by the person who donated these baseballs. So y'all give it up. On behalf of our entire team here at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, we want to thank you, your family, for being here today. This means, as I mentioned earlier, so much to this museum to welcome you back. And so we're going to get him set up so that he has enough time to sign all these books for all you folks that came out to support him and to support the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. Let's make 72 stories another New York Times best.